Good morning, GC 365. We are back for another reading.
Another one.
Come on. It's day 239, August 27th. My name is Mike. I am the youth pastor over at Gold Creek Woodinville, and I'm here with one of my great friends, Chris. What's going on, man? What do you got to say to the people?
Hello, people. You've made it a long way. 239 days. That's a long way into 365.
Come on.
Over halfway.
Hey, have you missed a day? All of the 239? You're such a liar.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I catch up. I play catch up. I have those long, like,
drives,
binge days.
Yeah, where you just drive and listen.
Some days where you're catching up on like the Stranger Things. Sometimes when you're catching up on the Bible app.
Hey, it's the truth. The best of us do it.
Yeah.
But we're excited to be with you. We are in Job, and Job has had some struggles.
He has.
He's gone through some tough things.
He's getting tested by a lot of his friends. He's having to set a lot of people straight.
Come on. But we find ourselves in Job, where it's honestly not the most uplifting passages to read through. It was like 5 chapters or something like that today. I think it was chapter 23 through 27.
Yep.
And there was one that stood out to me that I'm just going to read. Job 23, 11 through 12. It says, "For I have stayed on God's paths. I have followed his ways and not turned aside. I have not departed from his commands, but have treasured his words more than daily food." And what I like about that passage and why it stood out to me in this story is because Job has basically had his whole life ripped from him. Everything was going good. And then basically family's dying, all of his like crops and everything that he owns is getting taken from him.
Yeah.
His wife then tells him at the beginning, like, curse God and die, which is like, thanks for the support, woman. You know, it's just tough. You know what I mean?
It
like,
is.
If Hannah said that to me,
he literally has no reason to be faithful anymore.
Exactly. But what I love about this passage is he's kind of talking about like, this is how I'm staying faithful. This is how I'm able to live and still honor God in the way that I'm living. And I love that it just closes with, it's because I'm treasuring his words more than daily food. That in the midst of trial, in the midst of pain, I'm looking to God's word to be the thing that keeps me grounded, keeps me centered. And I don't know about you, has there been a time in your life where things have kind of been falling apart, going crazy, and you have had to just rely on God's word?
Well, more than one time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such is life. I mean, that's why they ask you, or there's a saying, the glass half empty or half full. Just the way to look at life sometimes, and the way to look at, your walk with Jesus too. There's times where trials and tribulations can get you. I mean, like I said, I've had them and they keep coming. They've happened more than once. I hope they're not as bad as what Job had to go with.
Right.
If that is, then that's just my walk, and I have to take it as I get it. And yeah.
It's like that saying where you're either going into a trial, in the middle of a trial, or coming out of a trial. Like, it's always like, it's going to be a part of life.
Yep.
And the question for us as Christ followers is, how are we going to deal with these things? And Job is saying, I hold fast to God's word. That's what keeps me grounded. That's how I'm able to get up in the morning, stay positive, and those sorts of things, which it is for me. When I don't read the Bible in the morning, I'm a terrible person.
Oh, yeah. The Bible will keep you. I mean, it's accountability.
Yep.
For me, worship music helps me for that too. Early on in the morning, but absolutely staying grounded.
I love it.
Whatever it may be. Yeah.
I love it. And then we continue. We're in 2 Corinthians. So we have Paul writing to the church in Corinth, and he, in this passage, is addressing basically that they have been falling short. They've been making some mistakes. And he says, hey, I'm not going to see you. You would be, what does it say exactly? The reason I didn't return to Corinth was to spare you from a severe rebuke. And then he goes on to say, like, I didn't want to dominate you and basically tell you how your faith should be put into practice. And what I find interesting about is, even though they had like made a mistake, even though they had been living in sin or whatever it is that they were wrestling with. And Paul's saying, you deserve to be rebuked for those things. He goes, my desire is not to come and overpower you and tell you how to have your faith turn into practice, but my heart is to come alongside you. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier this morning before we came here to film. But it's almost like we have a tendency in church sometimes to try and tell people how their faith should result in right practice. And it's like, allow the Spirit of God to do those things, right?
Yeah.
And what does that make you think of when you think of Paul?
Well, like you said, allow the Spirit of God, but everyone, like we were talking about earlier, everyone's in a different walk. So people learn things a different way. People are going to learn with their walk with Jesus in different ways as well. And it's huge, especially for people in our position in the church, you being a youth minister with the middle school and high school kids, me helping my wife with the kids pastor, kids ministry. That's early on life where they're in their walk, where they're really just getting molded, let them discover what their walk is with them.
For sure.
With God. Yeah.
Yeah. I have in youth ministry specifically, I have parents come up to me all the time and they're like, well, what do you do? Like, what is your philosophy of like youth ministry? Like, I feel like sometimes people think in youth ministry, you're only playing games and like hanging out and eating food. Yeah. When it's like, maybe that's only the stuff we like post pictures about or whatever is like all the fun stuff. But I always explain to parents, my job is to allow your student to fail. And my job is to continually just point them back to Jesus and to like walk alongside them in those things. And I feel like that's what Paul's doing in this passage. He's saying, you guys are making mistakes. And my job isn't to tell you exactly how to fix it right away, but to come alongside you and to encourage you in your faith so that you can stand firm. Yeah. And that's what our job is, or my job is as a youth pastor. Your job is as a father to help allow your kids to fail, but continually point them back to Jesus. And then it continues. Paul's talking about a specific person in the church that had failed, basically was in sin, and the church was upset with them or whatever. And he basically says, okay, we've brought him back. We've rebuked him in a loving way. Now it's time to forgive him and kind of bring him back into the church. And we were talking about this earlier as well, of just like, as it closes in verse 11, it talks about how we need to know the enemy's like things that it tries to do to try and divide us. Yep. And how a lot of times if we see someone fail, it's easy for us to just write them off forever and just be like, they messed up and I'm done with them. I'm not friends with them anymore. Right. Yeah.
That's the human side to us. And that's why God is God.
Yeah. But yeah. And so we were talking about too, like, Paul's saying we need to be aware of the enemy's vices that try to entangle us. And I think not even in a corporate setting as a church body, but even individually, like when you're wrestling with different sin struggles that you're dealing with or anything like that, like we need to be aware of the sins that so easily entangle us and the schemes of the enemy that he tries to entangle us with, so that we can be aware, like, hey, this is just the enemy trying to tempt me. This isn't something I need to
be able to see it before it comes.
Exactly. So being prepared for those things. And then the last thing in Proverbs, we're not going to say anything about the Psalms. We're going to let you read that on your own. All right. But in the Psalms 22 or Proverbs 22 verse 6, direct your child onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. And so I'm going to ask Chris this, because he's got 3 kiddos and I only got one.
Only one.
So what do you got for me, bro?
Well, like you said earlier, I think the other scriptures led into this, really trying to raise your the kids, allow them to make their own mistakes. So I direct them onto that path. I steer them the right way, but let them sort of, I guess, pick a little bit of the directions, like what we're driving in. If we're going to try to break it down into a little bit of what is the word I'm looking for here? Like a metaphor, okay. I put them on the road. They get to pick what vehicle they're in. Okay. So that's what I do for my kids. I know, we're going to put them in church. We're going to, have them do the extracurricular things, make sure they know we know the people that they're hanging around with and things like that. But I'm not going to tell them what they can and can't do with their friends so much. I mean, sometimes you got to nick some
like,
things.
Hey, but you can't hang out with them because every time you're being an idiot. Yeah. And we can't be having that all the time. Sorry, Rhodes, you're 1 year old. I don't care. Can't hang out with them. Bad influence.
It's been 2 times now. I can't deal with this anymore. So stupid. Yeah, no. I'm not gonna put them in a box. I'm not gonna completely take away their childhood, but I'm going to, let them know from the mistakes that I've made. For sure. Let them, but while also letting them continue to make their own mistakes and be able to learn how to pick themselves back up.
I love it. Well, that's all we got for you guys. Chris, what's one last thing you got to say to the people? Just random fact or random statement. What do you want to leave them with as they're going about their day? Oh, I forgot to say, today is National Just Because Day.
That's a perfect thing to leave it with.
Which means go do that thing you've been wanting to do, but it just for some reason doesn't fit in your schedule, and go do it just because.
Yeah.
Come on. It's
Ice
national.
cream, just because.
Hey, Cold Stone. Just
Stone.
because.
Yeah.
Cheesecake Factory. Just because.
No. Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
Hey.
I'm jumping on that one.
Hey, comment in the chat what you're doing for just because day or what you want to do, what you're going to try to do. But thanks for being with us. We love you. We'll see you tomorrow for another GC 365.